Okay, I guess we could get started. Welcome everyone to this week's GBO Community Zoom. Once again, just to introduce myself, I'm Anthony Remajan. I'm the interim director of the Green Bank Observatory. I've been in this role for about a month now. I just want to give a couple updates to the community of what we've been kind of working on over the last month in preparation for support for the scientific community over the course of the next several months and into our planned summer shutdown. So the first email that we're going to send out to the community this week, maybe into next week, is an update on the status of observing just in the event of a possible government shutdown. As we all know, there's continued talk about budgets and in the government right now, and kind of March 14th, this Friday, is a critical date. We just want to inform the scientific community that in the event of a government shutdown, that Green Bank will continue observing as usual, normal, for at least several months. So we have enough support from the National Science Foundation in order to kind of run operations in the unfortunate event of a government shutdown. So we shouldn't be seeing a reduction in observing just in case something happens. But those folks will be receiving a email from us saying that if you have a government issued email address and we need to contact you to try to go into the DSS and change that. So that information is coming to you, but we will be observing as usual, at least for several months, in the unfortunate event of a government shutdown after Friday. Other piece of good news is that GBT is about 25 years old now, and it needs some pretty hefty maintenance to keep it up and running. And so we've been awarded by the National Science Foundation to start our painting projects, our painting the entire GBT. That's going to take a huge effort. We've got the first increment of that paint that's going to be coming here over the next several months. So we're going to start painting the upper feed arm. So that's the very top of the GBT out to the boom and above the receiver cabin. So we're going to start there. And that will lead us to a pretty lengthy shutdown over the course of the summer in order to do that work. So another email that will be coming out to the community is our maintenance schedule over the course of the summer. But this is really great news. The GBT, as we said, is 25 years old. It's time for this maintenance to really take place and work on the infrastructure around the GBT. So we're very fortunate and very happy to get the support from the National Science Foundation to start our painting process of the GBT, starting with the upper feed arm. So those are the two updates I have for the community. As always, I'm available for questions, comments, or concerns. But at this point, I'm going to hand over to Dave Freyer to introduce our speaker for the day.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's my pleasure to introduce Daniela de Paulis, and she's from the SETI Institute and was a recipient of a Bloomberg grant through the Green Bank Observatory to carry out some of her work here, which she'll be talking to us about today. She's been trained as an artist, so most of her career she has been an artist, and she's moved in this area of SETI work. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Daniela. As you get up and you can go ahead and get your presentation started. If you have people that are participating, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A box and we'll moderate them at the end of Daniela's talk. So go ahead and take it away, Daniela.
Thank you, David. So I'm going to present a project that I already discussed when I was in Green Bank in December. However, this time I'm going to talk about another aspect of the project. So as we know, well, the community in Green Bank, I think, is quite familiar with my project, Designing Space. And this was a simulation of a first contact scenario. The project was launched in 2023 and was completed, not completely, but was completed just a few months ago. And at this point, I can draw some analogies between the interdisciplinary project and the real first contact scenario. I would like to say that these analogies that I've been drawing between the project and the real first contact scenario are my own interpretations of of this possible scenario. So I haven't been discussing this with scientists, anthropologists, for example, or people who are working in the post-detection field. So these are my conclusions, or well, interpretations that are really open to for discussions and feedback. So the the context I'm going to discuss today is based on a paper which has been just approved by the International Astronomical Union. It was presented as part of the meeting in Durham last year. And briefly, I will summarize the topic of assigning space. So it is an interdisciplinary project. I'm the founder and the director. And it is a collaboration with the Green Bank Observatory, the Italian National Institute for Astrophysics, the SETI Institute through the SETI Artist in Residency program, the European Space Agency, and the panel of specialists from around the world and from various disciplines. As part of this project, we simulated the first contact scenario. I collaborated with the European Space Agency. They agreed to use the TRIS gas orbiter, which is a Mars orbiting spacecraft, to transmit a simulated extraterrestrial message towards Earth. And the message was received by several radio observatories, including, of course, Green Bank, the Allen Telescope Array, and the Medicina radio antenna in Italy. And after the reception, the data of the signal were shared in the public domain for people from around the world and from different cultural backgrounds to decode and interpret this message. So this is the project in a nutshell. When I was working on the project between 2019 and 2023, I was drawing a lot of inspiration. Let's say I've been part of the SETI committee for the past 10 years. I joined in 2015. So a lot of the work that went into the project was really nourished by my participation in the work of the SETI committee. And the SETI committee has been speculating about the scenario of the first time we will receive a signal from another civilization. What will be the societal, cultural impact of this event? So this is a really important topic for the permanent committee, and the work of all researchers has been really fundamental for making this project. So from the very start, this project was, for me, primarily a project of cosmic theater. I call it cosmic theater because it is a form of theater where I involve people from around the world, but also extraterrestrial technologies, in this case, the spacecraft of the European Space Agency. But besides being a work of theater, the project was really molded based on scientific knowledge and, as I mentioned earlier, work done by the IAA committee. So the project was conceived as a realistic representation of a first contact scenario, engaging SETI researchers and the general public in the detection, decoding, and interpretation of a simulated message from an extraterrestrial civilization. From its early stages, the project aimed at actively engaging the worldwide community of SETI researchers, creating a global network of scientific institutions and independent specialists collaborating towards a concrete scheme, as if in the event of a confirmed first contact scenario. In its initial planning phase, the project also aimed at actively involving the scientific community by implementing the various stages of the IAA post-detection protocol. So the protocol I used for this project was the one conceived in 1989. I know there is work towards a new protocol, but because the project was initiated in 2019, I was mostly referring to this previous one. And because the project is so extensive, it at the end involved more than 80 collaborators. I divided the various specialists in 4 groups. that I was coordinating and supervising during the development and implementation stage of the project. So there was the scientific team with the scientists from the various institutes, the outreach team, the website team, and the message team. Eventually, this work led to the live event on the 24th of May, 2023. And during the live event was coordinated by the SETI Institute. So it featured people who collaborated in the project. So crucial collaborators, as well as amateur astronomers, entrepreneurs, and people who are generally working in the field of space or astronomy in various forms. So also the event featured the live transmission and reception of the signal. So the signal was transmitted from Mars and arrived after, I think, 60 minutes on Earth, was received by the Green Bank telescope, Allen Telescope Array, Medicine radio antenna. So during the live event already, it was quite interesting to see the reaction of the public. So we visualized the arrival of the signal on the screen. In this case, this is the visualization of the signal at the Allen Telescope Array. And some of the comments in the live streaming were asking, why cannot we hear the signal? So please put online, the signal arrives so all the world can hear it. So the people were really expecting to hear the signal arriving. And it is possible that this idea that the signal is actually audible might have been shaped by movies such as Contact. Here in the poster, we see Jodie Foster, for example, wearing headphones, listening to the signal coming from an extraterrestrial civilization. So one of the first, I think, analogies that we can draw between the project and the real first contact scenario is that very possibly the public will react in a way that will show they have been really influenced by the large amount of films and science fiction novels that have been representing a first contact scenario. I think these popular culture works have been really molding our understanding of for example, what it would be to meet another civilization, or what an extraterrestrial intelligence might look like, and so on. So besides Contact, when you search on Google for the most pivotal films that have shaped our understanding of first contact scenarios, there is also Star Trek, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Arrival, 2001, A Space Odyssey, talking about Western movies, of course, but also more recently with the translation of Cixin Liu's work, The Three-Body Problem, in English. I think this work has been also very influential in the imagination of Western audiences. So as you would expect from an actual first contact scenario, the media played a big role in shaping the narrative in a science space as well. So because we developed the project during the COVID-19 pandemic, we could already witness how combining cultural differences with the social media, you could really there could be really a shift of the narrative in various directions. So the scientific narrative during the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, was shifting in very different directions. And it is possible that this will happen in the case of a first contact scenario. So because we developed the project during the pandemic, we were very conscious about this possible issue. So we decided from the start to make it really clear that these should be conveyed to the media as an actual simulation and not as a possible first contact scenario. So we wanted to be very clear about the fact that this was a test, this was a simulation, and especially an artistic project. I think this really helped. So the clarity of the press release was really echoed by the global media in a way that left no room for misunderstanding. So although every article I read about the project was missing a lot of details, for example, also my role was very confusing within the project. Besides the details that really were completely lost, the overall narrative, I think, was sustained pretty accurately. So the information of the press release were reported back by the media around the world with accuracy. So there was no misunderstanding that this was that this was a real contact, but all the media outlets really specified this was a test. It took more than 1 year for people, for the general public to decode the message. And during this year, a lot of data were published and collected. So I'm basing my estimations on the richness of the data that the general public has provided to me and hopefully other researchers to compare the project to an actual first contact scenario. One of the most important thing is the data management. This was really actually striking. There is no mention to data management in the 1989 post-detection protocol that I used. And I think this is what really immediately caught my attention. First of all, when just before the launch of the project in May 2023, one of the collaborators in the project was persuaded by a private company, a cryptocurrency company, to host the data of the signal to facilitate the sharing of the data all over the world. The data that the various radio telescopes received were, of course, very heavy. So according to this agreement, blockchain technology would facilitate the sharing, the downloading of the data. We agreed for a short time to use this technology. However, I decided to use instead some open source hosting systems such as Zenobia eventually. But I think this was a really good example of how a real signal from an extraterrestrial civilization might be especially vulnerable to the manipulation of private interest, for example. So it is possible that the data of an extraterrestrial signal could be exploited for economic, political gains or other reasons. So the data could be commercialized, the data could be corrupted, could be destroyed, could be multiplied, modified, and so on and so forth in a way that we cannot even envision at this point, assuming we are talking about the data as we conceive them in 2025. Of course, in 20, 50 years, the concept of data might have changed completely. So I think this idea of data is really crucial for in a real first contact scenario. Something I think that is very unique to this art project is the idea of sharing the data with the public, with the general public in the public domain. So the detection protocol does not talk about that explicitly. I believe the new version mentions that the data should be shared widely across the scientific community. I think there is for sure an interest there by the scientists to share the data as widely as possible among their circles. But it's not very clear what role the general public will play in the handling of this data. And from what I witnessed by monitoring the project and especially the decoding process happening on Discord, I can imagine there could be pros and cons by engaging the general public. First of all, I want to talk about the uncertainty that would emerge if we ever tackled the question of analyzing an extraterrestrial signal. So assuming we do receive a signal from an extraterrestrial intelligence, I think one of the possible scientific questions could be what is the content of this signal? And what I witnessed in the decoding process through Assigning Space is that this was an extremely challenging process for the general public. And primarily because people were moving in a complete darkness. So because any idea could have been successful or not, it was very difficult for individuals and teams working on the decoding to sustain the effort to pursue a specific idea for long. So ideas were emerging. There was plenty of idea emerging. However, it was very hard for a team of people or for individuals to really pursue those ideas till the point that they could really decide, no, this idea should be discarded or pursued any further. So I think this could be a possible challenge. And I'm just quoting some more excerpts from the paper I mentioned earlier. So the obstacles posed by the crucial steps of extracting the message from the signal data might hinder the entire decoding process. Without any feedback of the certainty of the correct extraction of the content from the raw signal, the translation of such content might lead to flawed interpretations. Inevitable uncertainties posed by the decoding process of an extraterrestrial intelligence signal might pave the way to opportunistic exploitation of the data, to interpretations supporting controversial ideologies, to polarizing ideas or dogmas with long-lasting societal, political, cultural consequences. Essentially, because this was an art project, we could confirm that the public successfully extracted the message from the raw data of the signal. But if there was no feedback to the public, they would have gone back to the raw data as in a circle. So I think this would have led to a very messy, very confusing decoding process. So this first step, I think the fact that we could confirm that they successfully extracted the data of the message from the raw signal, I think was already a privilege that we would not have in a real first contact scenario. And sorry, I continue reading. Hope it's not too much. So in the case of a real extraterrestrial signal detection, the scientific community might prefer keeping the data confidential within restricted specialist circles, analyzing the content at facilities removed from public scrutiny. This approach, however, raises security concerns for the specialists involved in the decoding process. The option of keeping the data confidential within a limited intellectual elite could lead to distrust and even emotional instability among members of the general public. Conspiracy theories and anti-science sentiments might thrive as a result, as during the recent pandemic. The option of sharing the data in the public domain, as in Assigning Space, might help mitigate these risks. However, it could lead to an even more problematic series of social responses that are arduous to anticipate. In Assigning Space, the decoding process took place in a relatively controlled environment with moderators and procedures in place. Also, the public was aware that the project was an artistic endeavor and a simulation. So when it comes to the question, should we involve or not the general public in the decoding of a signal from an extraterrestrial intelligence, I think, as I mentioned, there are pros and cons. For sure, I think one of the benefits of having the public coming up with ideas is that because the message is from a civilization about which we have know nothing. So we again move in complete darkness. So I think having a large number of people tackling the problem could offer greater chances of success than having just a group of specialist people. So the general public in a science space offered a great variety of decoding approaches to the simulated extraterrestrial message. The cooperation between specialists and the general public could be beneficial in an actual first contact scenario. Complementing the skills and perspectives of professionals with those provided by citizen scientists could help broaden the limits of a specialized approach that ultimately might prove unsatisfactory when decoding a signal designed by an extraterrestrial intelligence. The greater the number of approaches, the wider the spectrum of interpretations, the more likely the possibility of identifying the meaning of a signal conceived by a civilization with skills and cognitive abilities very different from those of humans. Something else I experienced while moderating, while following the decoding progress on Discord and outside of Discord, is the fact that there were many different moods emerging throughout the entire process. So as I mentioned, this process lasted for more than 1 year. And everything is very well documented. Everything has been written down in the decoding chat on Discord. So it can be really, it really provides, in my opinion, a very interesting set of data of how the public went through this challenge. So among the moods that we could experience was excitement, of course, at first, when they first tackled the question of extracting the message from the raw signal, the excitement of succeeding in accomplishing that task. However, after this initial success, there was this lingering dissatisfaction and leading at times to extreme frustration because none of the ideas that they were presenting seemed to lead to any result. So in the case of a real first contact scenario, the dissatisfaction and resentment resulting from an enigmatic and frustrating decoding process with many decoding possibilities open yet equally uncertain, combined with the lack of clear reference points, could escalate both within the scientific teams and the citizen scientist community engaged in the quest. And I could really see that happen because I think if the message had not been decoded after 1 year, I think this frustration could have been really escalating. So I can only imagine that if at this point the message had not been decoded, people on Discord would probably become pretty furious about that. So the question is, how would this play in an actual first contact scenario? Probably there would be a lot of frustration. Overall, assessing this 1 year process, I can say that in general, the public responded very positively in a playful, interested, engaged way. I received thousands of drawings, for example, messages, and 99% of this material was constructive, positive, which leads me to think that an actual first contact scenario might be welcomed with the same positivity that we experience through this project. However, reading the messages I received and also monitoring the process, the decoding process on Discord, I could tell that people who engaged with the project were people who had already a strong interest in science and in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So it is possible that in the case of a first contact scenario, we might see the engagement primarily from this group of people, and maybe the rest of the people of the public might be completely indifferent. The reception of an extraterrestrial signal might be received actually with boredom by the majority of people. So it is possible that the public announcement of an actual first contact scenario will mostly impact people within intellectual, economic, political, or ideological interest in the topic, whilst leaving the majority of people mildly or completely unengaged. Possible societal threats to the announcement of a first contact scenario might emerge instead from the sustained manipulation and biased communication of data and information, steering public opinion towards a potentially controversial assimilation of the event. So in my opinion, looking at the data that I gathered with this project, the possible negative reaction to a first contact scenario might not come directly from the announcement of the reception of an extraterrestrial signal, but more by the narrative shaped in the long term by various parties who might have invested interest in steering the narrative in one direction or the other. So I think that could be a possible, that could possibly lead to a negative or controversial assimilation of the event in the long term. Finally, to close this talk, I just want to mention that I was really honored that after completing this art project, some of the scientists I've been working with for a Assigning Space approached me just a few months ago to ask me if we want to repeat this experiment. But this time, the scientists will be working not for me, but with me, meaning that we will really try to do Assigning Space 2. We even have a new title, A Single Sky for now, so it's a temporary title. So we might stage A Single Sky as a follow-up project to Assigning Space where the scientific community is fully engaged and really taking advantage of these experiments with the European Space Agency to also calibrate their instruments, for example, or to really use this opportunity to really explore the science of SETI from a different perspective. So I submitted this abstract for the International Astronautical Congress in Sydney in October, and if it is accepted, I will be presenting it there. And in the meantime, I started already the conversation with ESA to see how we can take this project a bit further. Happy to take any questions if there is any. Just want to close with these nice drawings.
Thank you, Daniela. Oh, I'm just looking at the picture. Okay. We have a few questions that come in, so I'll remind our, several more have just come in. Our participants, go ahead and put their questions in the Q&A box. Our first question is, why were the specific amino acids chosen, and why were they made so difficult or unreadable positional structures depicted?
Well, this is part of the things I cannot reveal simply because I think it's one of the leads that will remain open-ended. So essentially, I worked with an astrobiologist when I was composing the message together with some collaborators. And I wanted to have certain types of amino acids in the message. However, I think at this point, it's really up to the citizen scientist community to decide what is the real meaning of this message. So I think objective would be to wait how this group of people, which represent a micro society, how would they organize around the idea of finding a conclusive meaning to the message? Will they agree on a conclusive meaning of the message, or will they not be interested in finding a conclusive meaning? So I'm waiting for them to see how they will take this, what kind of meaning they will assign to this message. So it's not up to me to say what these amino acids are or what they represent.
Okay, thank you. There's some discussion in the Q&A. You'll get the full list of the Q&A discussion. We'll make sure we'll send you the transcript. But I'm going to focus on the actual questions here. What would we deduce from a chemical formula? Like, for example, that the extraterrestrial is organic. So if you and would that suggest that it would kind of eliminate AI computer-like origin of the message if they sent an organic chemical message? Yeah,
Well, I'm not sure if the message that we created for Assigning Space completely rules out the possibility of AI. I mean, I think really this could be interpreted, if this was a real message from an extraterrestrial civilization, it could be interpreted also as, you know, a form of AI trying to send a recipe for recreating a certain kind of life that they experienced maybe in a faraway past, or simply spreading this life form by using AI, for example. So, I mean, I don't think this would necessarily rule out the possibility of AI.
Okay. This is more, it was a comment or a suggestion. I'll see if you have any, you can respond to it. And it was saying, sending out the nucleic acid formulas to nearby stars is like, that's what we should be doing as our next correct activity. So.
Actually, sorry, Dave, I think I have a problem with my headphones. They really cut some frequency.
Okay, I'll repeat. It really seems like sending, this is a comment from one of the participants. It really seems like sending the nucleic acid formulas to nearby stars is the correct Nix activity.
Oh, I see. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, why not? When we were creating this message, we really struggled because I think when you really question any idea you come up with through the lens of anthropocentrism, as I was very keen to do, very few ideas really managed to survive. You know, and yeah, so eventually I was hoping to, you know, I think this idea of the cellular automata brought together a series of ideas that were satisfactory for me, but it seemed that going towards the direction of chemistry was the most interesting option, because we assumed that there could be some universality there across the Milky Way or the cosmos in general.
Okay, I want to switch from chemistry, so more philosophical. Have you considered how the reaction of religious leaders to an actual contact event would strongly influence the public's reaction?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I could already see some people obsessing around this message. So the obsession growing around it was quite interesting. And this is why I was quite pleased to see that it was successfully decoded after 1 year, because it was growing into something really sacred for some people, to the point that they completely dissociated the message from the project, and they stopped thinking of it as something human-made. So it really triggered some very interesting, I think, psychological reaction from some people.
Okay. Jim Jackson, who was our former director, sends greetings from Sydney. And his question is, in hindsight, what would you have done differently with what you have if you do it over?
Yeah, well, I'm so happy you follow the talk, Jim. Thank you. So in hindsight, what I will do differently, I think we were, well, there was a lot of really, a series of lucky coincidences in this project. So I would say I did not expect it would have such a global impact. I'm not sure if I would do anything differently, but if I had the possibility of doing a rerun, like most likely we will try to do, I would probably experiment with AI, and maybe, yeah, I really don't know. I'm not sure, because a lot of the ideas when I make these art projects come during the process. So sometimes I have this initial plan and gets shaped by how we work together with the collaborators, and a lot of new questions emerge through the process. But I'm very pleased with how Assigning Space went in general. So I don't think I will change much, to be honest.
Okay, a couple more questions. How does the documentary, The Age of Disclosure, compare with your work?
Sorry, I haven't watched that
I haven't
documentary.
either, so I'm not sure. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, sorry.
Okay. Then maybe one last, whoops, somebody else. Let's see if they, okay, an additional question here. What do you think the most informative message might be now? Like,
Sorry, the most formidable message.
informative message.
Informative.
Yeah, like, so what do you think, like, if you would send out a message, like if you were a record, I guess, I think what they're asking is, if you were to send out a message now, what would you think would be the most informative message that we could send out?
Okay, as humans towards another civilization. To be honest, I thought it was really interesting to try and embody and try to imagine to be extraterrestrials than the other way around. I don't find this challenge very interesting, in my opinion. I don't find it interesting to send a message to extraterrestrials. I sent brainwaves into space in the past. I thought that was quite interesting because it tells a little bit about our the signature of our experience, more than biology or something else. But Carl Sagan did that as well in the Voyager record. He included a 1 minute recording of brain activity. And also Solaris, for example, the science fiction book talks about that idea of sending brain scans into space. If I were to compose a message to send to aliens, I really don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you now, because I don't really think about that too seriously.
Okay, that's fair. I made a comment recommending, instead of the chemical, but a mathematical message. Saying a mathematical message would certainly be more universal for technological societies, organic or otherwise. And I'm going to read the last question. I'm not even sure it's going. It's not even a question. So you'll get a list of the participants in the comments, and I'll, for the record. So if there are not any, a lot of people are providing some commentary here, but not necessarily specific questions. So we're going to go ahead and end it here unless we have any final questions. I'd like to thank Daniela again and remind our participants, our next community Zoom will be in 2 weeks, and I closed off the browser window, which I don't have it here now. So I'm going to be on another topic related to GBT results. So until next time, say bye, everybody.
Thanks.
And thank you, Daniela.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.